88.5 Soufriere FM is now 5 minutes after the hour of 10 a.m. in Surface Solution, of course, the Eastern Caribbean. It is now another edition of House Guest for today, Thursday, the 15th day of May 2025. And I'm excited once again to present with me Mr. Newton Eristhee, Operations Director, Claire Caribbean. It's a pleasure to have you here once again, sir. Thank you so much for gracing us here with your presence, a brief introduction of who you are.
Good morning, listeners. Good morning, Karina. Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure. My name, as you indicated, is Newton Eristhee, and I'm the operations director for not-for-profit Clear Caribbean. And we've been working in St. Lucia for more than, I would say, something 2016. Yes, so almost 10 years. And principally, we've been working with the community in the ocean, dealing with coral reef enhancement, livelihoods, and basically at the nexus of livelihood enhancement and climate change.
Definitely. And today's topic actually is coral reef restoration in Soufriere. Among that, we will discuss the presence of sargassum, as we've seen as well, and the upcoming Fishermen Feast, and of course, your newly elected post, the Fishermen's Cooperative. With that being said, mention the significance, especially coral reef and our Caribbean, our ecosystem. Could you speak to that?
Okay, I'd say this. When people come and visit the island, they want to see the sea. They want to play in the sea. So it's part of the service. People come to St. Lucia to dive, and that's a very big attraction, or coral reef. Our fishers require the coral reef for the fish. So it's not only about recreation, it's about livelihood, it's about food and security. And when we think about the services that the ocean and the coral reef produces and gives us, it's huge. The value, you can't really put a value to it. So when we think about all the issues related to climate change, everything that we do that impact the ocean also impacts the coral reefs. And if we have no corals at the end of the day, we would have had a significant impact on not only our livelihoods, not only about our well being, not only on how we would feed our children and how we would have protein in terms of fish. So it is a significant aspect of our life here in the Caribbean and elsewhere.
Thank you so much. Given that, how would you describe the current state of our coral reef right here in the Caribbean? If you were to speak, in St. Lucia as well.
I will speak for St. Lucia. I would say that the reef systems are actually undergoing a lot of stress. There is still healthy reef there, yes, but the stressors from land included siltation, fertilizer use in the farming in the industry in the hills. Um, Also, in terms of overuse, in terms of when people go and dive and snorkel and the impact they touch corals, etc. So there is a lot of stress on the corals from the human side, but we're talking also of stressors of global warming, warming seas, increased storms. The last 2 years, 2023 and 2024, we saw unprecedented heating of the ocean. And the temperatures in the water in Soufriere was at least 31 degrees 20 feet beneath the ocean. 31 degrees Celsius, I'm talking, that has been unheard of. It has killed a lot of corals in St. Lucia and in the Caribbean. So that global warming picture is something that's significant and has created a significant negative impact on the coral reefs of St. Lucia within the last 2 years.
With that in mind, what would you say are the main threats?
Well, I would say pollution. I would say warming of the seas. I'd say the pollution comes from a lot of human impact, and I'm talking about both liquid and solid waste, as well as nutrient enrichment in terms of fertilizers that cause algae to grow faster than corals. Um, I would say that these are climate change is also a very significant aspect. And when we talk about that, it's a whole slew of things. But right now, I would say the thing that we saw most was the warming of the seas. And those high or increased temperatures resulted in significant mortality of coral reefs.
Okay. As far as we're concerned, especially looking at coral reefs and its restoration as well, how about what we can put a hold on? For example, pollution. What maybe strategies are there? What can we actually do to reverse that cycle if possible?
Well, one of the significant things in terms of pollution is the treatment of waste, or in some ways, the reduction of the flow of waste into the oceans. People have the view that the sea can take anything. You know, once you throw it in the sea, the sea will get rid of it. We need to really look at how we dispose solid waste. If the rain falls and the rivers overflow and flow into the sea, you'd see a lot of plastic bottles. We need to really deal with that. Perhaps silt traps can work. You also see a lot of sediment, and that's an indication that there is a lot of disturbance. Perhaps farming, there's water eroding a lot of our soils. So we need to look at how we can enhance the integrity of our soils, and perhaps look at changing our farming methods to look more at permaculture, a type of farming that enhances the organic content and enhances the integrity of the and reduce degradation of the land. These are some of the things that we can do in general. In terms of yachting, we have a significant yachting sector, and a lot of them have no. Well, either the holding tanks are open, or they don't have a system that allows for it. And I think that we need to look at that a little bit more, and perhaps have a discussion with the yacht charter companies to see how they can embrace a system that allows for there to be checks and balances on where and when persons who charter these yachts can actually dump or open their holding tanks so that they could release their waste.
Which is true. And I think a lot of these ideas as well can actually be brought to life, and it has to do with public awareness as well, and maybe signage put up because we may practice it, but unless maybe something is not written for persons to actually adopt, this is where the culture remains.
Yes, I think there are a lot of policies that are there, and perhaps if we were to look at all the PSAs, that have been done over the years, I mean, there's a significant body of work, and very often there's not enough funding to continue playing these PSAs on the stations, or given perhaps having a nice slot to air them, and so they play for a while and then they disappear. But there is a significant body of work there. There's also, I think, the need for the use of technology. A lot of people are now, well, the youngsters are into TikTok and all those things, and perhaps the adaptation of some of our PSAs to use that media would really help. Apps, there is some consideration of a new system that we've been looking at called the Blue Valve system, where you can download an app. It is still in its infancy in terms of research and development, where you could look at your app and it will tell you where you are. It will give you information about the area in terms of yachters, and it would also tell you whether your valve for your holding tank is open, and these are some of the things that we can actually start embracing with the technology. And certainly the schools. One of the things we do a lot of is go to the schools. We go to the primary schools in Soufriere, the secondary schools, and we speak about the ocean. We speak about what you can do. We ask, what is it do you see when you go out there, and how you can impact that. And I think that the youth, they're significant. They have a significant role to play.
I love the fact of the public education in schools. Let's look at the ocean and Clay Caribbean. What specific initiatives are there in terms of the coral restoration?
Okay, well, what we have been doing is taking fragments of wild corals and putting them in a nursery and growing them. And then we've been planting them strategically on the reef. Um, the idea is to bring them closer to each other so that they can reproduce sexually, and so that we can have hardier stock. So we've been doing a lot of that. But what we found within the last year, a lot of corals, not only in St. Lucia, died. And there was significant mortality in the nursery. However, we still have a lot of corals that survived, and these are considered to be hardy stock. And what we've been doing is having surveys around St. Lucia in an attempt to look to find those corals, staghorn and elkhorn corals. And along the west coast, our surveys, well, we didn't find many, probably about 3 or 4 colonies surviving. However, quite recently, within the last few weeks, on the west coast, we discovered a very huge stand of Acropora palmata, they were very healthy, and it's not far. So we have been trying to speak to the fishers. We've created flyers, so we asked them, "Hey, have you seen this? Where?" And we've gotten some good results, because one of the areas that they'd indicated was where we found quite a few, and we have to go now to other sites. We want to work with them closely. I think that even the younger people we've been working with, they have actually been gaining life lessons as well as skills in coral restoration, which, as you know, is now a CARICOM vocational qualification, coral restoration and gardening, that we actually developed with the TVET and Council and Ministry of Education in St. Lucia. So we have been doing a lot with respect to that. In terms of advancing their livelihoods, we have actually been working with them, and a young tour operator from Soufriere, that's Sugarboat Charters, Mario Justin, he is very, very good. And an MOU is actually being developed between him and the Soufriere Coral Gardeners to look at developing tours to take people to the coral nursery, so that they can develop a sustainable financing mechanism. And another MOU is also being developed with the SMMA, so that they can work closely with the coral gardeners. The coral gardeners have now registered. They're actually officially registered, and they have a bank account now, so that they can actually start doing work. And so we've moved a lot of these youngsters from being there on the street without skills to individuals who are now recognized in a specific and specialized area, and doing work and moving them towards development business, that they can have some sort of sustainable financing. So it's not only about environmental enhancement or coral reef enhancement, it's about livelihood, it's about life skills, it's about people, because after all, the human element is key.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eristhee. Here I am thinking, and I'm sure our listeners as well are a bit curious for persons who are actually interested. How do you become part of such a project?
Well, I would say interest is one of the first things. If you're interested in the ocean, if you can swim, if I like to say if you're waterproof, um, this is something that is there. Um, we, as part of our initiative, we actually trained a number of people in scuba diving. Um, our donors, Sandals Foundation, Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, they actually provided a lot of funding and support for that. And then we train them in, I am an assessor as well as a trainer in the CIBET, competency based education training. And that is my area. We have a number of people here in St. Lucia who can do that. And I train them in coral restoration techniques with a view for competency learning on the job to eventually getting certified as a coral restoration and coral gardener practitioner, level two. So I think that the interest and the ability to be in the water, be comfortable in the water is the key, and that's why a lot of the young men who are who are very knowledgeable and in the water can have an opportunity to come and learn a skill.
I'm very happy you say that. It's like being a fish in the water, for sure. Um, I think to date as well, we have had successful women and men as well from that whole industry. Applaud them. Earlier on, we had conversations where some of them are right here from Barron's Drive, Market Road. Kudos to them.
Yes, yes. I think that we have had at least 4 or 5 ladies join our coral gardening team, and I would say that Chanela Sylvester James, I will call her out because she has. She started as an open water diver. She's now a dive master, courtesy um, support from Sandals Foundation and CBF. She is a certified coral gardener. She has gotten her certification from the Tibet, and I actually see her as one of the lights coming from our community. There are a number of other young ladies who are involved in it in our coral restoration activity, and it's often said that if you want to get something done, you need a woman there to do it. And I think a lot of the times, the young men, they want to do it, but they need a little encouragement. They need a little more encouragement than the ladies. But I can certainly say that we have had quite a bit of success with ladies in the program.
Thank you so much. And I believe for a moment there you were just referring to yourself as well. I got that for sure. We
Well,
have Devon Bart, Love the Sea.
Well, I think being in love with the sea is one of the key things. I actually started because I was in love with the sea. I wanted to be in the ocean all the time. I was there every single day swimming, and then I got the opportunity to learn to scuba dive, and it opened a different world. My eyes were totally amazed. And from there, I started doing a lot of research work. So I am a marine scientist by training. Yes, my love for the ocean and for yes, MMA is there, and certainly working with members of the community, that is key to me, and it is important to have work that's done not only for the development of yourself but development of your country, for the development of the people. And this is where the coral gardeners understand it, because their livelihood depends on fishing. A lot of them come from families who are fishers, and they've seen the ocean. And now that they're underneath the water, they're realizing, you know what, we can do a lot more to enhance and to move our economy forward. There is right now a lot of movement away from fishing towards tourism. So it is getting that delicate balance, being able to maintain the ecosystem services, being able to maintain the ability to get food and have protein, as well as livelihood enhancement in terms of making money with the dominant industry in St. Lucia.
Again, thank you so much for that insight. From a biologist standpoint, are there any new technologies in the coral reef restoration process?
Well, in terms of technologies, there this is a developing area. A lot of people are actually trying to combine different genotypes or different types, just like if you would try to breed a better bunch of goats. I remember the Ministry of Agriculture recently brought in some climate resilient goats, but there is a lot of work being done in that area, and there is even discussions right now because of the mortality of corals, um, because of the warm temperatures, of what is called assisted gene flow, where you have the movement of more hardy corals from different islands and different places, bringing them together so that you can actually get more hardier stock, so to speak. There is a discussion moving about moving corals from St. Lucia to St. Vincent, and that is under discussion. Corals from Jamaica down to the Eastern Caribbean, and the reason for Jamaica is because those corals are able to withstand higher temperatures. Whereas in the Eastern Caribbean, traditionally we've had lower temperatures, so compared to the northern parts of the Caribbean, and this is where the discussion is right now. You know, can we move corals from one location to the other? What are the hindrances of doing that? So this is the area that we're at right now because, for example, I know in St. Vincent there were a lot of surveys done, and not many Acropora palmata were found. In actual fact, the fear is that they could go extinct in that area. So assisted gene flow is one of them. Moving corals from one location, one island to the other is part of that.
Okay. To the listening audience, you mind sharing with us how does Clay Caribbean monitor reef health?
Okay. One of the things that we do is we do agri surveys. We have actually participated in water quality testing, and essentially, the agri surveys measure the the reef, the benthics, or what is below. So we look at the percentage algae, the percentage live coral, whether or not there are sea urchins, how many grazers are there. These are all indicators of reef health. So these are the major things that we look at, and we do these surveys
Permit
in
me
the
to
area.
interrupt. How often are those surveys
Those surveys
done?
are done every 6 months.
Okay.
And we actually do them within the area of the reef that we work. Um, I have done some of those in and around St. Lucia in other areas, especially over where sea moss farming occurs, looking at the benthics and providing baselines. I would say, for example, we have to be aware of shifting baselines. As the years go by, things change. When I was a grad student in the, well, let's say more than 20 years ago, I did a lot of that benthic reef health in and around Soufriere over in Anchassane, right around the bay, all the way over to Pitons. And things would have changed significantly since then. So we must continuously do that, and the assistance of the Department of Fisheries is also significant as part of that work. We also have Rita. Rita is the extension officer for Soufriere from Department of Fisheries, and she plays a significant role in all the activities associated with coral restoration, coral gardening, everything dealing with fisheries within Soufriere canneries and ancillary.
Thank you so much for that. How do you think the local communities engage in the coral reef protection? But before that, let's take a pause. We have Sheldon Lionel. Other than that temperature, what are other issues you face when transferring coral? And he did say, does the invasion of seaweed affect the growth of coral?
Okay, very good question, Sheldon. Handling is a very important bit. Besides temperature, if you hold the corals too much, you can actually damage them. If your hands are dirty, you are actually going to increase mortality of corals when you transfer them. They also need fresh water, oxygenated water, so you continuously need to supply them with fresh water. In terms of sargassum, yes, we actually had significant mortality of corals in, I think it was 2022, because of an influx of sargassum in a particular area in the nursery. And we had to relocate our corals from there because these sargassum mats sink. And when they sink, they either smother the corals and reduce the light that reaches them, and when they decompose, they produce the hydrogen sulfide gas that actually, when it is in water, becomes a sulfuric acid, a weak sulfuric acid. And that acid would actually weaken the calcium structure of the corals and eventually kill them. So we actually had significant mortality, and whenever we see sargassum mats, any of the corals that are pretty close to the shoreline, we go and we move them from the nursery because we have them growing on basically spiders or frames. So that is a significant aspect of it. However, the Soufriere Bay is unique in that it's very deep, and when they sink, they can sink to great depths, and so that may be why we see them disappearing quite quickly. However, the problem arises when they accumulate on the beaches. And that is when you have significant work by hoteliers to try to remove them because it smells. You have all sorts of vegetation, animals being washed up, and that contributes to the scent. So we do see that we need, right now, I think a couple of days ago, it was unprecedented in the quantity of seaweed, sorry, that we saw in our bays, and I think the predominant current is pushing it northwards.
Thank you so much for that. Vision, what do you see, for, changes that can be implemented?
Changes in terms of sargassum.
Yes.
It is very difficult to try to put a handle on the sargassum. Again, it's a climate change issue. There was a really good article in the online newspaper, St. Lucia News Online, this morning. I saw they really, Miss Hunt spoke a great deal about the fact that it's a combination of changes in current, It's a combination, and that includes warmer oceans, as well as increased nutrients from the large rivers that flow into the sea, as well as, again, all of our activities. Remember, I mentioned agriculture for fertilizers. That increases the reproduction and increase in the mats, the sargassum mats. So reduction of some of our activities, um, as definitely a climate change issue, global warming issue. These are some of the things that the long term issues that we have to deal with. The short term, there are some discussions relating to collection before they come on land, before these large mats come online, because obviously it's significant. I sometimes find it difficult to understand how people can withstand or the hydrogen sulfide gases, especially on the East Coast, Pralin, Miku. These areas are inundated with sargassum, and we are just getting a bit of it over on the West Coast. But it is a significant issue, and a lot of researchers are actually working on it. I actually read somewhere that there was a young person who was looking at utilizing the gel from sargassum to make artificial limbs. I think it was a solution, a young solution, and as well as fertilizers and stuff like that. There are a lot of things that people are now trying to consider how they can utilize this resource.
Clarification purposes, it has been said with the presence of sargassum, or especially the fisher folks, they benefit greatly. Certain fishes would definitely thrive at a time like this.
Yes, well, a lot of the times the sargassum mats act as a fish aggregating device, so to speak, where you have the small ones hiding under it, and the larger ones come to feed
So
on them with
pros
the
and
larger
cons
ones.
of the sargassum.
Yes, so there are some pros. The other thing is that you have part of the life cycle of a lot of the ocean species includes floating on the surface of the ocean. And lobsters actually attach themselves to these floating mats. And for one, believe that when you have a lot of these, once the lobster senses there's good ground underneath to settle, they're going to just settle, and perhaps in the next few years we're going to see a lot of lobster. But in the meantime, now we have to deal with the issue and the aesthetics of having this on our beaches where we have a lot of recreational activity occurring.
Okay. And if we have to look at the call to action, how can persons really get involved to support, whether it's publicly as well, publicly to really offer in the smallest way possible for change?
I think change is within us. And if you see a change, if you see there's a need for a change, there are opportunities to work with your community groups, to work with the people the fishers, for example, the fishing cooperatives, the diving association. As a matter of fact, I recently saw the dive association has some intention of doing some underwater cleanups. Um, the Soufriere Fishermen's Co-op is working together with Canary as part of a pilot project to do some underwater clean and beach cleanups. These are not new, but we need to continually do these things. As you indicated earlier, sometimes we hear about them for the time being, and then they disappear for a while. We have World Reef Day coming up in June. Again, a lot of activities are there, and they are going to be publicized so that people can come out and be involved in beach cleanups and volunteer to do. If you can dive, if you love the ocean, come out and do these things. And the intention is for the Soufriere Fishermen's Co-op to work closely with donors. There's a major project St. Lucia unleashing the blue economy, the UBEC project, that we actually have benefited quite significantly from. And there is a lot of activities that are there to allow the public to become more involved with the ocean and the activities associated with that.
Thank you. It is now 20 minutes moving up to the hour of 11 a.m. in Surface and Ocean, of course, the Eastern Caribbean. For those of you just tuning in, good morning. In my midst is Mr. Newton Eristhee, Operations Director, Claire Caribbean. It has been a wealth of knowledge. This you can never stop learning, relearning. I admire the work that you do for sure. Let's reach out to Sonia. She's been very instrumental as well.
Yes.
In assisting. And even as we speak as well, there is. I'm sure you might be familiar with the Dover River project. Just
Yes.
yesterday we had a consultation, looking at the weather pattern and heavy rainfall contributing to flooding and all of that. And then the gentleman did present their interest in wanting to adopt a section of the river and all of that thing. So I think again these initiatives are there for persons to contribute and support in the smallest possible way that they can.
Yes, indeed. As I mentioned, everything that happens on land eventually impacts the ocean and via the rivers. Once it gets into the river, it will reach the sea. And you know, sometimes we have a river passing through our property and we're farming and stuff like that. Sometimes further up there are a set of pigs or something like that. Somebody's doing something. And if we can have persons adopting a section, eventually, everybody adopts a section and we have positive change. And I think that that's very important. And Nadia's been doing a lot of work going to the schools and dealing with issues in terms of water quality testing and stuff like that. I think that that was a very significant aspect of helping understand the impact in terms of pollution from the farming community and on land into the oceans. I think that we cannot do or work in silos, but we need to work together. And that is why a lot of people consider the ridge to reef approach, where everything that happens on land works and impacts the ocean.
Definitely. We have Sheldon again with a heavy presence. So how far offshore are you working with the restoration?
Okay. In terms of offshore, we are working very close to the coast because the coastal, well, how should I say, the reef structure in Soufriere is very narrow. The coral reef is very narrow because of the bathymetry. It's very deep, not very far offshore. So it isn't very far from land. In terms of the East Coast, where we've recently discovered a healthy stand of Palmata, is probably about a mile offshore. And incidentally, we had the deputy chief fisheries officer present on that survey. He's generally very interested in doing field work, even though he doesn't have a lot of time to do that. Most of the time spent in the office dealing with the broader paperwork issues. But because of the nature of St. Lucia's bathymetry, uh, it necessitates work closer to the shoreline. The other thing too is that the corals that we are working with are traditionally those that are close to shore, so that they actually, I was about to say attenuate waves, but that's kind of big, so that they reduce the energy of waves hitting the coastline. And these waves can damage the coastline significantly. And those corals protect not only young juvenile fishes, but reduce energy to reduce erosion of the coastline. I hope that answers your question, Lena.
We hope so as well, certainly. Um, I would love for you to share this very moment the Soufriere Fishermen's Cooperative, your new role. How has it been? The challenges and how you're looking to transform this. I'm seeing all smiles.
No, I actually enjoy working with people, and working with people to enhance what they have. And the Soufriere Fishermen's Co-op is one of the successful cooperatives in St. Lucia fishing cooperatives. We had been without an operational ice machine for over a year. And with the support of the UBEC project, or MP, the Minister of Agriculture, um, we have actually managed to build an extra room to house an ice machine that was donated by the UBEC project. And it became operational only about just before jazz, as a matter of fact. And so we're now able to provide and produce ice. And that's an important, very important bit in terms of hygiene, in terms of being able to keep fish fresh. We actually need ice. So this is just one of the things that we are working on. There's also further movement in terms of development of the co-op. We'd like to enhance the surroundings. We'd like to do a lot more. And coming after Hurricane Beryl, where there was significant damage, we have a lot of work to be done. As a matter of fact, our entire plumbing system was was damaged because of that. And even now, again, through the Ministry of Agriculture and our MP, work is actually being done to refurbish the bathroom facilities, the plumbing facilities right now, even as we speak. Again, there are a few challenges where we need to work, and we need to look more on the value added products, so that we can provide a service to the community in terms of fish. Perhaps we can process and look at how we can provide frozen fish for consumers. There is also the the work that we're looking at doing with the other co-ops, for example, the agriculture co-ops. We've recently, together with the director of cooperatives, submitted a proposal for the matching grant system, for basically to have or work with a farmers co-op looking at aquaponics. We can process their because they're looking at having aquaponic system using tilapia, as well as having these fish available for processing and utilizing the waste from fish product to produce fertilizers. So it's about transitioning, not only in providing fuel, but also being able to provide value added product, and to actually allow our members to benefit more from the services.
Thank you so much for that. I'm not sure if you're able to speak on it. We've witnessed, I think, laws and bylaws where the fishmongers were not allowed to go around openly selling the fishes, wheelbarrows, cats, and stuff, because it was not presentable. And the focus point was actually at the cooperative. You catch and you sell your
Well,
fish.
well, there, as a representative for the fishing, for the fishers in Soufriere, we have to think that there has to be a delicate balance. There is the whole issue of hygiene, quality of product. When you go and you sell your fish in a wheelbarrow, I mean, come on, look at the aesthetics. We need the ice. The issue of I've seen fish in the drains, uh, pieces of fish after people have sold fish. So I can understand the concerns of business where that is concerned. Um, we have a facility where you can actually come, you can sell your fish, but then again, the fishers are concerned that people there's not enough traffic in the area, so they go and they vend elsewhere. Um, but again, if we have rules and regulations and laws, we must obey them. I mean, in a society with no laws, it's chaos. So we actually need to as fishers to obey the ordinances that are there, because they're there for a reason. It's there for safety. It's there for our health. It's there for other people's health. Now, how would you feel if when you go buy your fish? Do you go and buy it from a wheelbarrow? And when you look at the fish and you see, well, okay, it doesn't look too fresh because it's been there for a couple of hours. Would you want to buy it? No, you need to have a system where you can be comfortable with the product that you're buying, and the quality of product can only come from having an area where you can sell your fish, have it properly iced, and you can be assured that you're getting a good product.
I totally agree with you on that as well. And if we have to look at presentation along with hygiene as well, the bareback doesn't always work. Put
Yes.
some clothing on, something, you know,
I
even
think,
if it's fish.
yeah, no, I think that we have to look at the fishing industry as a business. It isn't it isn't a system where you just go there and anything goes. That may have been the old days, but right now we have to look at it. We have to move forward, and there is a significant amount of money that could be made in the fishing industry. It's just how we actually look at it, how we view it. And I think that while there are some challenges in terms of infrastructure, because we certainly need to upgrade our infrastructure at the fishing co-op. Again, I think that you know, this is all part of the infrastructural development that we intend to move with, to increase the ability of fishers to actually just come there. The ambience, the aesthetics, the hygienic setting. These are things that we really need to work on.
Uh, Aside from that, what would you really like to, during your tenure, would you like to implement and ensure that it comes to fruition?
Well, one of the first things was that ice machine, and we actually got that done. I'd like to see increased membership. I'd like to see increased participation of fishers in their business, because I was elected to run their business, and I'd like to see increased benefits for fishers. The other thing that I would really love to see is that much talked about pension scheme. It is indeed a very difficult thing to implement. We've had some discussions with Sagicor, a Sagicor representative. We've had representation from other insurance companies about how we can develop a plan for the fishers. The issue is that we have aged fishers, and at 50 years old, just to start up a pension scheme would require a lot of money to start up. But there are innovative ways of doing that. There's talk about using investments. And one of the things that we plan to do as part of the month of Fishermen's Feast activities is to invite persons to have a discussion with our membership about possible pension schemes that we can implement realistically, because that is something I would really like to see. And I'm sure that our member of parliament has spoken about it and would really love to see that as well. Um, but I think that this is something that's critical, especially for encouraging young people and young fishers in the industry, as well as outgoing older fishers. So that scheme whereby there is some benefit after you start fishing is something. It may not look the same as the NIC, it may look differently, but something that allows for some benefit post fishing life, so to speak.
I agree fully, and of course, if they were listening as well, I'm sure the majority would have agreed with what was shared here. 3 minutes to the hour. Just before we leave next month, as you did indicate, will be that grand observance, Fisherman Feast. They were excited. This is that time for them to really get their boats decorated and get that much appreciation, shown to them. Um, you mind sharing the plans with us?
Well, let me say that that is still a work in progress. However, the general intention is to have a week, not only a week of activities, but a month of activities. And this idea is that we can start off with the cleanups. We can start off with working on the community. The whole discussion, having a meeting with fishers about the discussion that revolves around what happens after you start fishing, the whole pension scheme. So the idea is to culminate during that last week of June with the feast. But prior to the feast, we have a whole month of work to really sensitize as well as engage not only fishers but the public about the significance of fishing in Soufriere. That is the general gist of what we are planning for Fishermen's Month next month.
Excited, and I hope you are aware that Sophia FM enables the platform to come in. Public awareness is key to come in and let the listeners know as it unfolds nicely. I'll be troubling you.
Thank you. It's absolutely no trouble. I always love to hear from you. And whenever I hear from you, I say, hey, this is an opportunity to speak to the members of the public, to speak to our listeners, to speak to our members and our community. And that for that, I'm always glad. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Sheldon, again, the query. Any thoughts on artificial reefs? Could it help with your project?
As a matter of fact, Sheldon, you must be in my mind because we actually are planning on doing artificial reefs. It is part of our reef enhancement scheme in terms of attractions uh, to the nursery. And as a matter of fact, we have gotten some funding to produce two modular artificial reefs, and that's a discussion that we have to have with all stakeholders. So thank you for allowing me to bring that up. Uh, the artificial reef concept. I know that the Ministry of Tourism is also having a very major look at artificial reefs, and it allows for not only the uh, ecosystem services, it allows you to plant corals on them as well. and it also provides habitat for reef creatures. So these are all part of a slew of activities that are in our action box, so to speak. Thank you very much for mentioning that.
Exactly 11 a.m. Any final words from you, sir?
Thank you again for having me, and it's always a pleasure to be here. But I would like to say thank you for the engagement of our coral gardeners, all of our coral gardeners. I'd like to thank Department of Fisheries, Rita Strawn Mitchell in particular, Mario from Sugarboat Charters, definitely someone, a young person willing to involve themselves in community activities, and everybody who's helped us along the way, Super Fishermen's Co-op, the staff members. I think that, together as a community, we can do a lot. And I think we can do a lot more, and we'll strive to do that.
On that note, we say thank you to Bevan Bart, not forgetting Sheldon Lionel as well. Thank you so much for your concerns, and we hope they've been met. And to you, sir, thank you so much, Mr. Eristhee, for sharing your insight and for the vital work that Glen Caribbean is doing. Keep up the good work for sure. Coral reefs are the heartbeat of our marine ecosystems, and protecting them is protecting our future. For those of you listening, you can find out more about Clay Caribbean and how to get involved by.
Just speaking to Newton. That would work. And I'd also like to say that we cannot possibly do this work without our sponsors or our beneficiaries, or the coral gardeners and the community. But the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, the Sandals Foundation, a lot of these organizations have assisted us significantly in providing funding. The Department of Fisheries, they've been our big supporter and our assistance and our help. So I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved in this.
2 minutes after the hour. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time on House Guests. This has been Sabrina Ibikan, Mr. Newton Eristhee. Have yourselves a productive first day.
Thank you.
Relevant talk shows, and we heard you. 88.5 Soufriere FM presents House Guest, a brand new, fresh fortnightly feature airing at 10 a.m. House Guest will showcase a cadre of professionals from doctors and entrepreneurs